Welcome back. This is the Will Lives Podcast. This is your humble host, Danny D. And we back with Dr. A.E. So check it out. This is part one. It's gonna be one segment. It's not gonna take too long, but this is the Dr. A.E. We going Dr. A.E. Dixon, we're gonna be doing Florida's Black History timeline about the the magnificent triumphs of Florida. We're gonna do more episodes about Florida and other regions, Georgia, Alabama, because y'all know my folks from Butler Springs County, Alabama, Mobilia, all those places, because those are Choctaw, Chickasaw places of origins that came from Mississippi, mound builders that came from Mexico. But right now we're gonna stay focused on the Florida timeline. But y'all don't understand how close Florida and Mexico in the real Fertile Crescent is extremely prevalent throughout world history. Florida's a monster. Florida is a boogeyman to a lot of places. Not with, as far as history, that'll make you cry if you know a lot of it. But I'm gonna let Dr. AE go ahead and do his magic because he's so good at it. Oh my gosh! So anyway, take it away.
Greetings, good people, again. And again, this is part of the episode looking at my publications. And this is my third publication. It is, see if I can get it close enough. It's a timeline of the African diaspora experience in Florida. And it's basically just that. I'm going to open it up here. It is a timeline of Black history in Florida. And when I say Black history, I don't mean just African Americans, because Afro-Caribbeans had a very strong contribution, have rather very strong contributions to the state of Florida. And so their experience and their contributions cannot be left out, cannot be ignored. And so they are in this book as well. And as always, I just want to just give a background on it. I did 2 stints on the African American History Task Force, and that was under the Department of Education, State of Florida Department of Education. And so we were creating, and we were actually revamping, rather, the curriculum for African American history to be infused into the public school, to continue to be infused into the public school system, particularly for the 4th and 11th grades. And so on those 2 stints, as we were doing it, I realized that we had thoroughly gone through the Black experience in America and in the United States, but we had not concentrated enough on the Black experience in Florida itself, and that students would get a better understanding, of some of those larger themes and events that happened in quote unquote African American history for the country, if they knew some of the events that were happening right in Florida that coincided with them. Like some of the events with the Civil Rights Movement, because there were some things in Florida
Specifically
that were specific, and they had a direct tie. Like, quick example, King's mountaintop speech. Well, King used to try speeches out at smaller venues first, and then he would kind of massage it and whatnot. And then when he was on at a larger venue, larger stage and whatnot, then he would do the speech itself again for the larger audiences, or if he knew it was going to be, televised. And so the mountaintop speech was actually first given in St. Augustine, Florida.
Yes, sir.
And so St. Augustine had a turbulent history with the civil rights movement. King was arrested there. He was put in the back seat with a German Shepherd. And so my idea was to, infuse some of the Black experience in Florida. But we were pretty much done with the revamping. They were like, we don't know how we're going to squeeze that in now. And so I was like, no problem. I came up with the idea, well, I'll do the book. And the book teachers can use the book as a supplement to it. So when they are talking about these different events and different things, they can flip to the timeline book and they can show students what was happening in Florida at the same time, corresponding with whatever topic they were talking about. And so I created, again, this book. And so this book originally was created for the public school system, and specifically for teachers, so that they can, again, quickly infuse Black history in Florida in their lessons and lesson plans, or even in just their talks.
Curriculum?
Right, in the curriculum, or if they couldn't fit it all into their curriculum at that time because they had to stay on task with this one, you could quickly grab this book and show students what was going on in Florida at the same time.
Gotcha.
So it was a supplemental tool.
Yes, indeed.
And so the book was then placed on the website, on the timeline. I mean, on the task force website, and it was there for a number of years. Like I said, I did 2 stints. I was on, and I got off, then I got back on, and I got off. And so the book still remained. And so recent events, and we know what those recent events are. Basically, DeSantis put a mandate in, and they began to revamp the curriculum, starting with the African American History AP course, and then with the curriculum for African American history, specifically again for the 4th grade and 11th grade. And so when this happens, all kind of changes were made. Several books, of course, were taken out of the curriculum. My book, this book, was then taken off of the task force website and things of that nature. So I understood it's our responsibility to make sure that we know our history, we know our culture. We use this information to deal with and look at issues that we're facing today. And so this book is very important for young Blacks in the state of Florida, and for those who generally want to know about different experiences and how things went in different areas. But again, specifically for our children in Florida, because this information is being taken out of the school system. And so I republished the book, and now it is out published for the broader public. And so you can get the book by going to profaedixon.com/books. And you can order the book there, because just in all honesty, good people, if you live in the state of Florida, or you're from the state of Florida, or you have ties, family, relatives, what have you, to the state of Florida,
Strong ties.
you should have this book.
Yes, indeed.
If you're in the state of Florida, this should be in every black household. Grandmothers should have their grandchildren reading this book to them.
Yes, indeed.
And telling them how it was and giving them their personal experiences as they go through this book. And specifically, of course, or especially when there's times where they were living and they were firsthand witnesses to some of these events and some of these cultural things that were happening in Florida. And like I said, it's a good cultural mix. It's a diaspora mix because of the contributions, the culture, and all of those experiences by the Afro-Caribbean people are in this book as well. And so this book, again, should be in every black household in Florida. This is how we not only take the responsibility of teaching our history and our experiences, but it's also how we are able to demonstrate the importance of our experiences and our history by where the public school system has now changed and dropped to a certain extent. And we pick it up now and we take on that onus and we go and we teach our children. We teach our young adults. We keep the culture going. We keep our experiences alive such that we can look at these experiences, we can do more research, and we can use that to deal with issues for today. Because actuality, that is what African diaspora studies are. That's what Black studies are. It's three phases, what I call the three phases, right? There's the first phase, which is providing a voice to the voiceless. And if you watch my previous one, the discussion on my previous book, that was a part of it, right? Discussing and providing that voice about the Second Seminole War, Florida's Negro War, from the Black perspective. And so that's the first part to these studies, right? Providing a voice to the voiceless. The second, of course, is to make these cultural connections. And Florida is an easy way to do that because Florida is a transplant state, meaning a lot of people come from other places, particularly our ancestors. Most of our enslaved ancestors came from Georgia, Carolina, Alabama, and at that time, the Tennessee Territory. And they were transplanted here in Florida, or in Florida rather. And so those ties are to a lot of different, just not the southern states I just called, but other states, because then the Great Migration occurs in the early 1900s, where people from Florida are going all the way as far up as Indianapolis, Chicago, Detroit eventually.
Oh, man.
Cleveland. And so
Flint, Michigan.
These ties
at the time
are still there.
Yes, sir.
And so this book is just a broad overview. It's a timeline. It's put directly in order to make those, where you can make those cultural connections. And then the third, and which is probably the most important, the third is The third part of Black Studies or African Diaspora Studies, that is using this information to deal with issues you're facing today. There's no need to look at history if you're not going to use the lessons and the information in order to look at issues that you're dealing with today. That is the importance of history.
Yes, sir.
Because if you don't learn your history, you truly are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. So you take this history, you learn it, you get the documents, the primary sources, all of those things, and then you put that with what is going on today. How do we manipulate this information such that we are transforming it into useful information for today's time?
Absolutely.
So that we can now deal with this particular issue.
So let me ask
the
you.
Whole thing about it.
Let's do a little exercise, Dixon.
Okay.
All right. We know about things like star forts that they say the Spanish created, but we know they didn't have the technology created at all. We know that race didn't even exist in the 14 and 1500s at all. It was about where you was from. So this little exercise that me and Dr. Dixon is about to do, I'd like to call him Dixon because I like AE. So we're gonna humanize the great doctor because he's an amazing doctor, but he's so down to earth. But we're gonna see a couple of things. So we know that race was invented around the 1670s. So can we educate kind of everybody as to how we even how whiteness even came to be, because it did not exist in the 14 1500s, and we're walking up and through everything, the ideology behind these, like a Herman Cortez. So I think a lot of times the reason why people don't really believe history is because they don't know how to put themselves in that specific time period. I think Dr. Dixon does a phenomenal job of taking us to those time periods. See, you can't just read a book and look at it. I read a lot of them, but you can't read a book and look at it, and especially a history book, and not want to know what a relationship is. So, from my experience, I'm from Pensacola. Everybody know Pensacola is the oldest port in America. Well, European founded America, not, you know, like Dr. Dixon. It's La Ferida, La Ferida. So understand these relationships that one specific place had, which were a lot of the what you would call Moors, or what you would call Phoenicians, Carthaginians. Um, the relationship that you can tell that's had is in what? What's the most infrastructural thing that we can tell the relationship with cultures? Architecture. All I want you to do today, doctor, is just give us why we should always look at history, architecture, cultures, and how they are so relatable, because I think that helps people with seeing the value and knowing how to educate themselves by opening up their brains and finding relationships within themselves with people of our likeness. But we have a very diverse culture. Can you please go a little further in that, sir?
Okay. And I think if I start with the first question you said that we were going to look at,
Mm-hmm.
and how this whole thing of race came about.
Yes, sir.
How it was solidified, right? Because things usually happen socially, and then the government and law gets involved to solidify something, right?
That's right.
And so quickly with the English, because the Spanish had a totally different system. It was called a caste system.
Yes.
But with the English, and then eventually, of course, the
French.
Americans,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Race really gets solidified as a result of the Bacon's Rebellion, right? And basically, there was indentured servitude, right? There was indentured servitude and there was enslavement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though there were black indentured servants, not enslaved, but black indentured servants, they were treated differently from white indentured servants, right?
Yes,
See,
indeed.
that's the social thing that started first.
Mm-hmm.
And so a man named Bacon comes along. He's an indentured servant, and he works off his debt. And when he works off his debt, him and his other friends that had worked off their debt, they began to go out into indigenous lands and Native American villages, and they began to rape, plunder, and pillage and take the land. And so the authorities in the colonies, particularly in Virginia, told them, no, you can't do that. And he said, wait a minute. That's exactly what I was doing for you for 10, 12 years now. But now that I'm no longer an indentured servant, you telling me I can't go do it on my own? So what it is it does, it introduces, and you have to understand that it's not just racism that the two seeds that planted in the ground to create this country. And I try to get brothers and sisters to understand that all the time. It was two seeds. It wasn't just racism. It was racism and classism.
There we go. There we go.
And so when Bacon rebelled, and they rebelled against the authorities,
Mm-hmm.
and said, you can't tell me I can't do what I've been doing for the wealthy and you all for all of these years. You can't tell me I can't do it for myself.
Period.
I'm no longer an indentured servant. Now I feel like I'm enslaved. And see, now the light went off. Okay, we got to do something. We got to make sure that the classism stays intact, and we have to solidify this.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did was they started doing specific things to the black indentured servants,
Mm-hmm.
such as manipulating it such that they could never get out of debt,
Mm-hmm.
which would shift them and basically put them in the same class
Mm-hmm.
as the enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the Bacons, right, the whites who are no longer indentured servants, right,
Mm-hmm.
they then elevate them as a different class of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't. And you have to think about that. Think about that even today. When you listen to some of that rhetoric by your white supremacy groups,
Mm-hmm.
they're poor, they're uneducated,
Boy, I tell you.
but the first thing they say is, at least I'm not an N-word, right? See, and that was the basic premise that they started with Bacon's rebellion.
Straight up.
That put, at least make them in a class above blacks. Even though that black that was in indentured service, the few that did were able to get out of it before they started changing things,
Mm-hmm.
right? That black may elevate himself economically past
Everybody.
Bacon and his people, right?
Mm-hmm. Period.
But to placate those white indentured servants who were no longer indentured servants,
they had to capitulate.
They put it in their mind
Mm-hmm.
that you are in a better class because you aren't black.
That's
simply
right.
Because you are white.
That's right.
And so, again, we have to understand that classism permeates our community as well,
Mm-hmm.
the black community.
That's right.
And it has become more detrimental to our unity
Mm-hmm.
than good.
Now, who? Another question. Thank you for that. But
yes.
I gotta add this. I gotta ask this question because it's important that I ask this question.
Yes, sir.
Who is predicating the division? A poor black man can't predicate anything. All he know how to do is survive. So why would a indigenous black person, a black American, an American Indian, why would you want to disassociate yourself to become more so European-esque? Is that because of the culture? You've broken this down in the past, but I think we found a little connection to something. I want you to break down because I think you're picking up what I'm trying to say. I just
Right.
want you to grab it and go with it.
Well, it's because the dominant culture permeates every aspect
Hmm.
of our lives,
And all 9 areas of
right?
activity, yeah. Oh,
And so by nature,
hmm,
any sociologist will tell you, right?
yeah, yeah, sure.
The dominant culture, the dominant group, right?
Hmm.
Their culture, especially when they do specific things to ensure that their culture remains the dominant culture,
That's right.
in time, it permeates and they begin to accept that.
Hmm.
And our primary one that we have accepted that is killing us
Gosh,
is the fact that we are becoming more individualistic,
yes, indeed.
which is the
Yes, indeed.
primary mantra to white American culture.
That's right. That's
And
right.
white American culture is actually
Rugged.
defined as rugged individualism.
Yes, indeed.
And it began in England
Hmm.
and in Europe
Yes, it
as
did.
individualism.
Hmm.
And that is the core to their culture. And so the longer we are in this country, the more we adapt into their and accept parts of their culture.
Hmm.
And so the issue though is we are getting to the greatest time when we can change that
Yeah.
because there are about to be more minorities in this country than whites. And if we are not careful,
Hmm.
we're going to be in the closest thing to cultural apartheid as you can get.
That's correct.
If we do not begin to push more diversity, which includes different aspects of culture,
Hmm.
then minorities are going to, at some point, far outnumber whites, but white culture will still remain the dominant culture. And that is cultural apartheid.
Absolutely. So how do we're solutions based, and
Yes.
we have to add and provide solutions of how not to even uh, I think indigenous people and people that are of the old world, the old culture from our DNA. I think the solution that's where the solutions lies. I think it really lies in our DNA, and we have to wake that up within ourselves because we got to be the best version of ourselves every day to renew that. What do we have to do? You got to be like this gentleman right here, Dr. Dixon. He's a learned man. I mean, you heard his story, you heard everything that he had to, that he's humbly and with an immense amount of humility gave you from his heart and wrote about it. So that type of I respect that. You understand? I respect it to high order. I respect intelligence. I
Well,
just I just want
it's
you to go and give them to that perspective too, for sure.
well here's the, and this will be the last thing that I say because I know we have to
Yeah.
stay cognizant of the time this
Yep.
go
Yep. Yep.
round.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Everyone really does, and it may sound cliche, it may sound kind of corny or whatever the case may be, but like Michael Jackson said, everybody got to start with the man in the mirror, right? You got to look at yourself in the mirror the same way I did when I was a young man and knew that I had messed up and needed to change my life. And even today, I look myself in the mirror over the last couple of months, and you have to look at yourself both ways, outside and inside, and have the self-discipline to do the things, the change that you want to change to make yourself better. And over the last couple of months, because I'm using the best example I know, which is me, right? Over the last couple of months, I had gained so much weight over COVID, and I got lazy, and I kept the weight and even went up a little bit more. And I looked in the mirror and was like, I'm tired of this. I don't want this weight anymore. And then I had to get the fortitude, the gumption, and the self-discipline. And so I'm on that track now in losing that weight, right? So it's not always just the inside. It's taking a total look, whatever it is. Look at yourself in the mirror. Are there things that you don't like when you see it, whether it's externally? Have the gumption, have the self-discipline, start making those changes. And then from that point, you then look at your relatives, your friends, your community, how to help them as well. Because that is our culture. We are community-based.
From the root.
This is why we all are, you go through our neighborhood and there's always a group standing on the corner, or it's a group of ladies at the end of their fence sitting there talking, or on their porch talking, or after church ended at 1:30, you still got a group standing there and it's going on 2:45. And they forgot all about dinner and everything else, because that is who we are. We've always believed in the village raising the child and the community.
Reservation based.
And so we have to lessen that individualism. We start with it, but we don't end with it.
That's right. That's
See,
right.
their culture starts and ends with it. Because you get to Europe, I'm French, I'm German, I'm this, I'm that.
Yeah.
But then when they go outside, they're all white, they're all European. They're collective then when it's dealing with outsiders. Jewish people are collective outsiders. Then inside, they're individual and this, that, and the other.
Right.
So it's okay with saying I'm an indigenous black. My people didn't come from Africa. That is true. And that's fine. Our diaspora, we need to accept those things.
Absolutely.
But when we go outside the diaspora,
I'm popping with my people.
We share
I'm popping with my people.
Experiences. Whether I've seen the show of Blacks in London.
Yeah.
And what those young people are going through in London.
Yes. We share that experience.
You close your eyes, you change the dialect. It's nothing different from New York, Miami, Los Angeles.
Really ain't.
What young people are going through in London, England is no different.
No, it's not.
So collectively, when we look outside, we got to stay together. Within it, internally, yes, let's call it. Yeah, he's from London. Oh yeah, she from Barbados. She Asian. Yeah, oh, he's an indigenous. No, don't call him African. He's indigenous.
Respect people.
Fine.
Respect people.
But when you go outside, we all black.
You know what it
all
is.
Melanated.
You know what it is.
Call it, but you stick together.
Right.
And I'm gonna stop right there, brother.
Well, I think that was perfectly said. I couldn't have said it no better, because that's where I lie. I'm not into division. I'm not into trying to at every point out our differences. What I do have is a lot of respect, love for my culture, where I'm from my story, my mystery that became my mastery. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm trying to break down for you is it's okay for me to be me, because it was a whole lot of people that came before me. A great deal of people that came before me. So if I'm talking about I'm somewhere else and I'm from somewhere else, that means they don't matter. They go away. I can't have that. I cannot have that. Because that means I got to explain things, and I got to tell my daughter, I got to tell my nephews or something. I got to explain things. You can take it from there. Once you know the truth, you can take it from there. And all history does is give you the weapons to defend yourself from people that want to attack you in your culture. Once again, this is the Will Is Podcast. And always remember, say it with me, the will is yours. Yeah. Once again, masterful job.
Good job.
Great masterful job, man.